Hello and welcome to the Raceday review. I am JoJess19, the lead NASCAR writer for LineStar, a daily fantasy sports analytics company, and we will be going over the Dixie Vodka 400. It was in Homestead. This is the first race in Miami Homestead that was not a championship race since 1999, I want to say. I think 2000 was the first one. So it was very interesting to see how teams are going to play out. Usually it was a championship race, so one of the four championship drivers would win the race and win the championship, and the other guys kind of just stayed out of their way. So, being this is now a June race, it's supposed to be a March race, but it was now a June race as opposed to the last race of the year. You didn't really know what to expect going in. Overall, um, I saw some people didn't like the race, which was very surprising for me. I enjoyed it. It had a little bit of everything of what you wanted. We had green flag flashes for the lead. Didn't have any wrecks, any big meaningful wrecks at least. So I know people watch NASCAR for that for the most part. And it didn't have some things that people like, but overall, all the meaningful passes happened on the track, not really on the pits, which I prefer a race that at least does that. It got drawn out because of weather. I had written up that it was pretty much had a 50% chance of rain every day from Saturday to Saturday, which was just a pain in the ass for that to be a real thing, but here we are. So there was some lightning delays, there were some weather delays. Overall, it took a while to get through. I enjoyed it because I was working, so I was able to see more of the race than I was expecting to, so that was always a plus. But it was definitely different, not as exciting. It probably would have been a good championship race, but overall, I thought it was a decent one. For anyone who's looking for a little more action-packed um, with wrecks and things like that, we have Talladega on deck on Sunday, so hopefully that'll be able to wet their whistle there. So going into the race, what we're looking for targets, I'm just thinking dominators, as always we start with. I was thinking a 2 to 3 dominator race is what we would end up going with. At least two, as many as three. There have been at least two drivers leading 70 laps or more, and probably like four of the last 6 races, I believe. Sometimes you would get a one dominator race. Didn't happen very often. More or less, you'd see a couple guys really getting up front. So I wanted more than one shot at it, and that's what it ended up shaking out. The top three is where I normally tried to look for, where I wanted to look for my dominator. The top three this week we're going to sort this out by starting position: Hamlin, Logano, and Keselowski. So that's where I really wanted to focus. I'll go to my ownerships in a minute, but I want at least one of those drivers, and then I wanted two other drivers starting in the top 12, 1 to 2 other drivers starting in the top 12. Pricing was pretty soft. They had some wonky pricing on some drivers, but it wasn't too hard to make a lineup that I really liked. So that was that. So that was pretty good. And then you could pretty much go anywhere you wanted. I advocated for more of a stars and scrubs lineup. That's why I thought this is where we wanted to go. I figured we'd have 2 or 3 high-priced drivers and 2 or 3 low-priced drivers. There was a lot of value in the $5,000 to $6,000 range, so you really didn't need drivers in the sevens. Um, it was a little more balanced. Instead of three $10,000 drivers, we had a 10,000 and two mid 9,000s. Almirola was not that expensive. Riddick was not that. These prices were not right at all. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to update them live just because that's kind of embarrassing. I got most of it right, but I'll get there very quick. 7,300, or not nearly as quick as I thought. make sure the number locks on, kids. 7,362. So the perfect lineup coming in right at $50,000 as we saw, and he actually didn't need a driver in the $5,000 range or a third very expensive driver. So it was a little bit of a different approach. My place differential drivers, I didn't think you had to pick up too many spots. All you had to do was finish. Um, you just had to finish well. So Elliott starting fifth and finishing second is kind of the type of thing that I was looking for. I thought there were guys would be able to start in like 15th or 16th and finish like 10th or 11th, and that would fill up that card. But Reddick making a big move, Dylan making a pretty big move. We almost got the perfect lineup where the perfect lineup has one drivers 1 through 6. You don't see it very often, but every now and then when I put these things together, I will find one. We missed the sixth place driver who was. We're gonna find the sixth place driver for you. Apparently, we're not. Kyle Busch started fourth, finished sixth. He was expensive, so that's not going to cut it, especially with no lap sled. So, unfortunately, Kyle Busch did not make the cut. But overall, my lineup construction wasn't there, and my cash team got absolutely murdered. It's kind of what happens. Logano ran into the back of Quinn Huff. Uh, well, we'll talk about when we go through our player by player breakdown. We'll talk about all the mishaps. But overall, it was a fun race, and I made my money back, so that was a plus. So Reddick, loved Reddick. I wrote him up. He wasn't one of my core plays because I thought Custer was more of a core play. He had a safer for tournaments. Custer had a much safer floor, but I thought Reddick had the ceiling. He's one of the top rookies of the year. He's got to be the rookie of the year so far. Every time I look up the NASCAR stats on NASCAR.com, he leads the league in green flag passes. Just nuts. He might have been passed already just because we had some big races recently. But going into like 3 or 4 races ago, he was the highest passer, and he knows how to race. He knows how to race well here. He was starting 24th, and I thought he had top 10 upside. He only needed top 10 upside. A fourth place finish with lap sled is just absolutely incredible, and he turned in 48 fastest laps. That's another 24 points to the good. He was my highest owned driver. I really liked him at 7,300. I thought he was someone you can definitely build a GPP team around. I was worried about cash a little bit. He did make it in my cash lineup also. I had him in 70% of lineups, which this was a um, low risk of incident here. As you can see, only 7 drivers finished more than 5 laps down, so that's a combination of crashing and just sucking. Only 6 cautions for 27 laps, so there weren't a lot of cautions for any real reason besides rain. Besides the rain and the rain, lightning, and stage breaks, like that's pretty much all the cautions there were. So Reddick, I absolutely loved, and he delivered. 3%, the $3 ownership is 34%. The $12, I'll widen that a little bit so you can see, and it's ownership, not ownership, because I shouldn't make this with a screaming baby on my lap. Child, not baby. He's a little too old to be a baby yet. And he ended up turning in 84.75 points. I believe he was the third highest scorer of the day. Sort it for us. He was the second highest scorer of the day, just edging out Blaney. As you can see, I didn't really like Blaney. I was about even with the field with him, but as always, we will get to Blaney when we go through. So I really liked Riddick. He's been fast. He's been good at passing. He was great here in Xfinity. It's just great. I was a day late on the Austin Dillon train. Dillon had his baby Saturday night, so I mentioned in chat that he would be a very interesting, good feng shui type of pick because um, he was a new father. Could top five, maybe top 10 finish. He started 16th, finished 7th. He was actually runs pretty well here. I think his average finish was like 14th, and the last 4 or 5 um, races at Homestead. 14th finish sounds good, especially for 6,200, but when you start 16th, it's not the best. So I was a little off on him. So 16th, 7th, he ended up having 6 fastest laps, and he did pick up a lot of spots towards the end. He wasn't really running in the top 10 for too long. Just let's see where I had him. I had him in 20% of laps. Again, a little bit shy of the field. 49 points. Did not do well for me. Moving on, Ryan Blaney. I was even with the field on him. I'm in a um, DraftKings Daily Fantasy NASCAR like season long league, and stage points are at a premium, and he was the type of driver that I always find myself looking past and then kicking myself in the ass. So I've been making a conscious effort to look for these types of drivers, at least for in my lineup that I play in that tournament or that contest. Starting 11th for 8,800. If he starts 11th and finishes 8th, not going to get you on the perfect lineup. Still runs a solid race normally, off of my radar entirely. I'm sorry, I'm killing you. He's off of my radar entirely, but I've been making a little bit more of an effort to play drivers like him, and it's been paying off in the long run. Blaney was a great play third highest scoring driver of the slate. He was the second dominator, which I wasn't really expecting. I knew I needed someone in the top 12, but they had some big dogs in the top 12. I really thought the dominators that were going to shake out were Logano first, then Harvick, Truex, Busch, then Hamlin, then Keselowski, with Elliott somewhere in the mix there also. So I thought the top 7 drivers all had a decent shot of leading laps, but I really thought Logano was going to be the main dominator, or at least the dominator that led for like most of the first stage. And unfortunately, I put my money where my mouth was. I figured Logano would be about 25% owned. Hamlin would be about 15% owned. And then Harvick would probably be in the 30s, and Kyle Busch would be in the 30s, and Truex probably be a little lower. So my game plan was to get my core plays. So Cole Custer was a core play of mine, $6,000. He was starting. Let me just make sure you can see me well. Okay, that's fine. He was starting 31st, I want to say. Custer 30, starting 35th. I thought he had top 20 upside. He ended up picking up 20. He ended up picking up 13 spots, and actually, his average position was 22nd. So he fell back towards the end, which really sucked. He was running in the top 20s for most of the race, 17th, 18th, 17th, 18th, somewhere around there. He fell off towards the end, but I really thought that he was a top 20 driver. Couldn't really beat it for the price. So my cash teams plus my GPP teams, I had him in 65% of my lineups. I thought he had a good shot. I almost doubled the field on him. He was popular, but I was much more popular than him. So most of my teams had a combination of Custer and Reddick. Some had just Reddick, some had just Custer. Overall, solid way to build a team around. But I wanted to stack those guys, and then I would sprinkle in the dominators. So I went with 40% Logano, just because I thought he had a good chance of leading. Unfortunately, he got into the back of Quinn Huff, and a fucking pit stop of all. It's just pain in my ass. He was leading the race, and when that happened, to really just make me want to scream. Harvick, I liked as a little more of a dominator. He was starting a little bit further back. I figured he'd be owned in the 30% range, so I want to get more of him. So I had some leverage there. He was running inside the top 10 for most of the day, 10, 12. Um, let's go up to Harvick. His average position was 15th, but he was really running when he was running well. Um, he was running in about 10th or 12th, and then he just couldn't get up to the front. Whatever it was, I guess his setup wasn't right for the track, and then he ended up having a tire issue late. He finished the race, but he finished at 26th, and that killed all of my lineups. Any chance I had of doing well was pretty much hammered there, no matter how well I did on the whole how much I did on the whole Reddick thing and being over that. I just pissed it all away with being over on Logano and Harvick. Then my third guy I was looking for was Truex. Again, 40%. That was much closer to field weight. I was way under on Kyle Busch. I was expecting Kyle Busch to be about 20% owned. He's just been brutal this year. I wrote him up twice. I wrote him up twice trying to be early on him, and now it's just chasing. I'm chasing him to do something good, and it's not looking like it's happening as of right now. He'll catch fire. He'll end 4 races in a row, and I can't believe I didn't think Kyle Busch could do this. But until then, it's just chasing. So I'll probably go play in like the 20-25% range in some races now because I just can't. I love his price, but if people are just gonna be owning him this much, listen, I'll take my one lump in him going off and him being the chalk, as opposed to just taking L's every single week. And that's how I'm pretty much going to approach Kyle Busch from now on. 40 points, nothing to shake a stick at in cash. He sure as hell did better than my 2 studs that I had in my cash team. Um, but that's really not saying much. And then from there, I had Keselowski. I couldn't believe how high he was, 25%. Yeah, no thanks. I had almost no Elliott, but he did well. He was in the perfect lineup actually, but we'll go there. And then Hamlin, I had it right around field weight at 15%. He was my fade, mostly because I thought he was going to be 20-25% owned. He did terrible, 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 terrible here on the pole. Just absolute complete shit here. Um, so I knew that this was in the realm of possibility. Could he absolutely run away with it? Of course he can. Hamlin's one of those drivers that's just a pain in the ass, that he's always pesky good when you don't want him to be, and you think something's going to be lined up against him entirely, and he goes ahead and just dominates the entire race. And so I don't want to miss out on that. So I will always hedge a little bit with guys like him. I'll always have 5% of Logano, 5% of Hamlin, especially if I'm playing 150 lineups. Basically because if it is one of those sneaky races that no one thought he was going to do well in, or he had no business doing well in, and he goes off, at least I have a fighting chance of having a good combination. But Hamlin was very good at Darlington, both races. He was one of the fastest cars. So that recent history, I'm guessing, is going to be much more of a factor these days as opposed to long-term history. So we'll try to keep that in mind. It's just, boy, he had no business being anywhere near Logano. And if that played out the way that I should have, this would be a much different conversation. But Logano had car trouble, and I would have been set up perfectly because my big cash lineup was Logano, Blaney, and Harvick. If Harvick could have finished like 10th or 12th, Logano could have led until Blaney took over when Blaney ended up leading the 70 laps. Would have been a much different day. That's why we play. We got about 38 of these races we can do, 36 actual races. You got some of the heats during Daytona week, and you're going to have the All-Star race. So you got about 38, 40 of chances, 40 chances a year. That's it. That's like a week of baseball slates. 40 sounds like a lot, but to think of these are only one slate races, you don't really have a lot of time to fine tune. NBA slates you get, and general NBA day you get 3 slates. In a week, you'll get anywhere between 21 and 25 because you'll get some of those 2 turbo nights or the night and the late night. So that's 2 weeks of NBA is my entire 36 weeks of NASCAR. So there are a very finite amount of ways to do it, and even if you compare that to football, that's like 1 week in football between the Thursday, the Thursday to Sunday, the Thursday to Monday, the Sunday only, the Sun. I digress. Elliott having an absolute heater this year, not the best track. He's never been a uh, driver that was in the. He's never been a championship driver, so he doesn't really have any reason to go up there. Give me a second. I probably should have muted that, but a little something something's always very tasty. Happy I was able to find it in my local grocery store. But so Elliott, not really a driver that's known to do well here, just having racing his ass off. Absolutely great. Um, Low percentage play. I've had him in 8% of my lineups. The field was at 15, so I was under the field, but he didn't have the upside that I needed. He just got lucky that he only needed to lead 27 laps to be on the perfect lineup. He had a chance to win, but I think Logano, in his ultimate pettiness and being mad about Bristol, held him up a little bit when he was trying to chase down Hamlin. And you know what? Now they're even. They crashed in Bristol. Chase said it was his fault. He kind of owned up to it, but now he paid the price. He was going for a win. Logano did the right thing by not wrecking him, but still fucking up his day. Everyone's safe. He learned his lesson, and away we go. Hopefully. So, I saw a little bit of buzz about that, a little bit of speculation. You'll never hear anyone say that in the media. Well, to the media, you'll never hear Hamlin, Logano go, yeah, no, I did that because he's a jerk. So, it is what it is. Hopefully that'll bury the beef, and that'll be it for now. But for what people say about Logano, he looks like a dick. He looks like a dweeb. He's apparently a racer's racer, from what they say. So good for him. Almirola finally does not start on the first row. He's been starting second 2 or 3 races in a row, and he was just an easy fade this week. I liked him. I wrote him up as like an ancillary pick because he didn't have a lot of upside in his history, but again, this is a different cat. He'd always have a teammate in Harvick um, in the chase, so you don't really want to rain on their parade. So overall, he didn't really try that well, but I think he was starting 20th. Almirola starting 21st. Top 12 upside, I thought maybe a 7th or 8th. The fact that he finished 5th was good for him. Picked up some fastest laps, no laps led. Overall, solid race. Ended up on the perfect lineup. I was about even with the field. I didn't think he would be anywhere near this high owned. I'm not great with ownership percentages, I'll tell you that much. I know how much I would like, and then I gauge on there. I'm pretty chalky. I'm very chalky. So you'll never see me go real low on a very high price guy, except for, I mean, Kyle Busch. That was 20% off, but that's just because I couldn't even believe. But anyone who reads the articles or anything, I, I love me some chalk. I will be more than happy to choke down a piece of NASCAR chalk than try to find a reason to fade it. But I mean, we'll go through my ownerships altogether. I don't have a model because of no practice time, so that loosens things up a little bit. Um, but I did like Amarola a lot. I thought 35% of Amarola was a good amount. Turns out it was not nearly enough. Even if I switched him and Custer around for between the $300, would have been a solid play. These lap leaders aren't even right. I don't even know. Just you think you're doing the right thing. But so Hamlin was the major lap leader with 137 laps led. Next came Blaney with 70. And I don't think anyone else. Let me look at the loop data. I did percentage laps led, which is a pain in the ass. Tyler Reddick had 3 laps led for good for 1.1%. Chase Elliott with 10%, so he had about 40 laps. Another 10 for Logano, which doesn't help me. So Hamlin's average position was 2. That's pretty impressive. So that's the perfect lineup. The perfect lineup took down the $12 and the $3. The $3 again was a softer tournament. It's just I run the 150 lineups these days just to see if I can do it, and I've been moderately profitable over the long run for the season. You have some bad weeks, but never a week where I turn up a 0. Nah, 2 weeks ago that happened. But overall in the plus, but the way I get there is I pay the quarter arcade plus a whole bunch of dime times because I'm not good at this, and to the only other 150 lineup max tournaments is a $5, which ends up running you $750, and I'm not made of that kind of money to piss around with. And either the 10 or 11 or $12 one, whichever one they fucking run that this week, which is $1,500, which is a lot of money, and I have a mortgage to pay. So the only way for me to get that kind of exposure without having to worry about putting my kids to sleep in a bed at night is to run dime times, and they are very profitable. Anyone who is watching this, listening to this, doing anything, and they want to at least see how hard it is. It's quite the tribute to how difficult it is to be profitable when you're max entering. Because every time someone shows a screenshot of 150 lineups and they're winning like $185,000 because they took the first, second, and third place in one of these massive tournaments, you'll get a bunch of haters saying, well, if I ran 150 laps, I can do it too. Now you have a chance. For $15, you can run 115 lineups and find out how much you're going to win. And you get pretty profitable if you get 20. I mean, if you want to do it like I was doing baseball, and I would do 10 lineups in 10 contests. So if I somehow banked on 10 of them, I would end up winning $100 at least on $10, and then plus whatever other ones. That's hard to do. It's never gonna happen. But with only 1,100 people in the tournament, you win one 2 or 3 times a week, and that's enough to win back your winnings for that day. And you normally have a nice day. I'm playing. I was going over. I mean, 150 lineups. In those 150 lineups, I spent $18 because I had the $5, the quarter arcade, and 130 lineups in dime times. I turned those $18 into $29. I didn't win anything out of the $5. My top 20 lineups. I didn't put anything in the win anything in the quarter arcade. So my top 20 lineups were all duds because they all had Custer in them, Logano, and Harvick. So unfortunately, there goes that idea. So If you even take away those lineups and those, I ended up spending $13 to make 29. Nice day. Listen, I'm having fun. I'm doing a video for 0 people and not getting paid a dime for it. But overall, a nice solid day of DraftKings. Had some fun, watched the race, had a couple beers, enjoyed yourself, tried to make a little money. I would have lost my shirt because of the payout structure in some of these big tournaments. And it's just infuriating. This is a long diatribe about nothing. I tried to make this a quick video, but it's fun to do by all means. Um, anyone who can do it, anyone can do it. You want to practice making 150 lineups, tweaking your own things. You can do it. It's a beautiful thing. Do it as much as you possibly want. It doesn't cost a lot of money. These dime times are great, and you can make some serious money. You can make if you hit the nuts and you hit your build pretty right. I've had close to three-figure days on on these things. I had to take down a couple of tournaments each, but it, not on very often days. Those days make up for all the other things because if you were to find tournaments that allow you to play that many lineups, even on days that you have a so on the days that you break even or you make some money in the dimes, you lose your shirt in these other payout structure type of deals, and it's a pain in the ass. Like it's just not fun. But I digress. Maybe one day, if I bink one of these big tournaments and I can piss away $1,500 a week on NASCAR, by all means, because once, at least once, at most, maybe twice, I'll churn out one lineup that was the perfect lineup, and it'll be chopped with like 40 different people. But I mean, that's just cutting the top 40 spots, and the $11 is still gonna get you $7,000, $8,000. That's great. That's more than I've ever won on this place, but it's not going to make up for all the other times that you're losing a couple $100, and I'm not in the mood to lose a couple $100. Maybe one day, who knows? So just going over, I'm gonna real quick go over my ownership. Um, I completely faded all of these red drivers. That's funny. The correlation is uncanny. Almost every red driver, my red drivers are literally 0%. I didn't check that out before, and I mean altogether it was a good idea. The highest scoring driver in the bunch, stupid, scored 19 points, and that was Daniel Suarez. 19 points for $7,500. Where did he end up? I think he ended up like 18th or something. Not 19th, 28th or something. Let's find out. Jesus. Yeah, Suarez finished 31st, so just not what you're looking for. Just going to sort it the other way. I don't understand why 8 is higher than doesn't sort properly. But we went to Chase. I had him as a yellow. He had Dominator potential, but I wasn't a big fan of him. We went over these guys. Harvick gonna hurt. Boyer, I thought the price was too high. I figured I'd go a little low on him. Um, he got scored just as much as Wallace. They both. Just gonna shake my head. Truex and Logano, I had at even weight. I had much more leverage on Logano than I did have Truex, but that burned me in the long run. Kurt Busch, I thought was interesting. Another guy. Blaney and Busch were both drivers that filled the same role. I thought Blaney had higher upside, also lower low side downside, but Busch I don't think had a top 10. Had like one top 10. So I wanted the opportunity to at least go for Blaney. So that played out very well for me. Kyle Busch talked about Matty Benedetto. Kind of expensive. Starting 21st. I don't know how many times I've guessed 21st would be the starting spot. 23rd. I knew I liked this range. Really enjoyed this range. 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. I thought Reddick had the highest upside, which played out. I thought Kenseth could pick a top 15 pretty easily. Not top 15, a top 10 pretty easily. Thought Amarillo was a top 15 type of driver. Byron could have put me at, where did I? William Byron, I had him at 11%, so I was half the field. So I wasn't nearly as high on him as I could have been, but I thought that was really going to burn me. Another driver that's not great here when it was a championship race, and he has the propensity of just blowing up entirely. McDowell I loved. He was very highly owned. He hit a fucking seagull, pelican. That's how you know I'm having a rough one, when my driver hits a pelican. That's right, a pelican. Anyway, so he is that guy. Finishes 15th. He is just an absolute animal. I would love to see what he's actually. I don't know if they have pricing yet. They don't have pricing yet up for this slate, but I would love to see where he's priced for Talladega. They gotta do something. They're pricing him low, and I'm just going to keep playing him. I didn't need him that low. That's still kind of the problem. I wanted him at least 25% of my lineups. He was in 24%, so it's close. And as many as 40. It turned out there are so many drivers in like the $6,000 range that I didn't need him, and that's why he wasn't higher owned, but I really did love him. I thought he was a great option, especially for the price. He's just been on fire. So, unfortunately, I mean, he paid off. He did very well. It just, we didn't need him, so that's where that shook out. Eric Jones, he's cheap. He was cheap, and I wanted to consciously be under on him. He almost 5x the salary, so good for him. Another driver, he was a driver that started pretty high. Jones started 15th, finished 21st, but he had a bunch of fastest laps, so he didn't do well there. But the fastest laps ended up placing his score a little bit, well, raising his score a little bit. 40%. I didn't want anywhere near that. He's another driver like Kyle Busch that people are just loving him right now. No thanks. Newman, I thought was starting 14th, started way too high. I thought his ceiling was like 15th, but he ended up having car issues. Bell, I actually wanted, because he was so expensive, 9,300. He needed to take the place of a Dominator, which a couple of more points, and he actually would have another point, and he would have actually outscored Elliott. So that's a pretty interesting fact. He would have been in the perfect lineup if he got one extra point, actually a quarter of an extra point. But either way, I wonder what would ever happen with that if he ended up picking up one lap lead somewhere along the race, or Elliott was one lap lead less. I'm sure there could have actually been, I don't know why, but let's figure out a reason. If so, I have $1,700 less dollars to spend, $1,700 more dollars to spend, and my cheapest driver was Austin Dillon with 49 points. Emerald was there also. Tyler Reddick was also there. That's funny. Blaney was in the perfect lineup. Bell. Yeah, they probably wouldn't have even changed the perfect lineups. You just would have swapped out Chase Elliott. I'm surprised there weren't any um, variations of that, but you could have had Cole, not Cole Custer, Christopher Bell instead of Chase Elliott, and only been a quarter of a point away from having the perfect lineup and taking down all those tournaments, but no one had that lineup from what I can remember. Bell, I liked Priest 15%. Again, I didn't need to go 17%. I didn't need to go that far down. I always liked Dylan, but again, I didn't. He was priced up. I didn't like his 6,700. Bowman, kind of blah. I was under on Keselowski, under on Byron, way under on Johnson and Stenhouse. So that kind of ran through everything. I went long about nothing, which is funny. But so after this, we are going to Talladega. Happy Father's Day to anyone listening. Talladega is going to be Sunday afternoon. Green flag's probably about 3:30. They changed the body a little bit to prevent the Ryan Newman takeoff. They don't want tandem drafting because that's what they really saw in Daytona, so they're going to try to prevent that. So it's probably going to be a lot of single file racing until stage breaks and a lot of single file racing until the end of the race. I'm expecting fireworks for the last hour. Probably a couple snooze fests until then, so drink all your beers during the first 2 hours of the race and then enjoy the last hour of the race. Just a general rule of thumb at super speedways, again, I think they're going to have to look a little more into it, but I think the way that they're trying to make the package work is there's going to be less drafting, less tandem drafting, and they want more pack drafting, but that ends up just everyone running in side by side. I'm hoping there's still the possibility for a big one. I really am worried. Um, Daytona's my Daytona, but Talladega and Daytona are the only times I ever play the Minimax. I'm talking about the 150 max lineups with the $5 and the $12, the $5 and $12, of course, and the 12 actually is a $20 one this week. You always have the Minimax, and the Minimax goes for a couple hundred, so you could always put that. Again, it's very hard to win that, and their payout structure is still not great. It's much closer. It's pretty close to the $12 or the $10 or the $11. Their payout structure. So that's really, if you want to do it for cheap, you could spend $75 a day instead of 15. But again, if you make more money on the 15, even if you have a good day, you turn your 75 into 150, you double your money. It's much easier to turn your 15 into 30 than to turn your 75. So you think you need to be in like the top, if I remember correctly, usually the way that they're structured, you have to be in like the top 10, roughly, out of 50,000 people, 47,000 people to make your money back in one shot. That's just not what you want to do. Anyway, so rule of thumb for super speedways, just love the drivers in the back. Their Talladega is different than Daytona, where you can get drivers starting a little further forward of one driver in the top 10, one driver in the top 20, and the rest of them all after 25th, somewhere along those lines. I haven't looked at it yet, but it's not the same exact way of Daytona. But overall, that's pretty much a good rule of thumb. You're gonna want to don't care about you don't want to care about how much a driver is because you usually leave about $7,000 to $8,000 on the table and just free roll all the drivers you never want to pick. Yeah, writing this article is always my least favorite thing to do because I have nothing to go on. As always, thank you very much for joining. Sorry it's a Wednesday night. I try to do these Mondays or Tuesdays. Life has been difficult. Pregnant wife. Just it's life has been rough. But Thank you very much for stopping by. Of course, try to rate it, leave a comment, tell me that you're watching. Not a lot happening on the last one. It'll be on both Twitch and YouTube. I would love a follow on Twitch, a subscribe on YouTube. Just drop by, say hi, even reach out on Twitter. As you can see, no shame in my game. I got my Twitter handle right in the bottom of the screen. I just want to hear from you. If you have any questions, want me to add something. We're a little limited without practice, so I don't have my full model running, which kind of makes me sad. But it is what it is. Thank you again for joining us, and have a good day.